My husband told me I'm fatter than his coworker, then suggested that my gift should be a home workout setup. When I got upset, he rolled his eyes and said I should be grateful he cares about my health. It started like any other evening, me cooking dinner, him scrolling through his phone, half engaged in a conversation that I was mostly carrying. Nothing seemed off until he casually dropped a bomb between bites of food, as if he were commenting on the weather. You know, my coworker Sarah has been hitting the gym a lot lately. She's really slimming down. You should try that too. I froze mid-stir, my grip tightening on the wooden spoon. My stomach twisted, and for a second, I thought I had misheard him. But no, his face was calm, unbothered, as if what he had just said wasn't the verbal equivalent of a slap. What? I finally managed, my voice a mix of disbelief and forced patience. He looked up briefly, oblivious to the damage. I mean, you've been complaining about feeling out of shape. It could be good for you. Right. Because he had been so concerned about my feelings lately. The same man who hadn't noticed the new dress I wore last week, the same man who couldn't remember the last time he genuinely complimented me. But sure, now my body was suddenly his business. I tried to push past it, to tell myself I was overthinking, but then he kept going. Actually, I was thinking, maybe for your birthday, I could set up a little workout space for you at home. You know, to help you out. Help me out? That's when it hit me, this wasn't some offhand suggestion. He had thought about this. Planned it. Decided that instead of a romantic dinner, a thoughtful gift, or even just asking what I wanted, he had determined that what I truly needed was a gym in my own home. Not because I had asked for it. Not because I wanted it. But because he wanted me to use it. And suddenly, Sarah, the coworker I had never even met, wasn't just a name. She was a standard. A silent competition I hadn't signed up for. I set the spoon down, carefully, like I was handling something fragile, something that might break if I wasn't careful. Because if I let myself react the way I wanted to, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly, forcing my voice to stay even. You looked at me, compared me to a woman you work with, decided I didn't measure up, and now you think the best way to show you care is to buy me weights. He sighed, already exasperated. Don't be like that. I just thought you'd appreciate it. Appreciate it. A gift wrapped in thinly veiled criticism. A reminder that, to him, I was a project, something to be fixed, improved. I swallowed down the lump in my throat, refusing to let him see the way his words had sliced through me. Wow, I said, shaking my head. You really don't get it, do you? He rolled his eyes, muttering something under his breath. Something about me being too sensitive, too dramatic. And that's when I knew, this wasn't just about the words he had said tonight. This was about every dismissive comment, every moment he had minimized my feelings, every time he had made me feel like I was asking for too much just by wanting to be treated with basic kindness. And just like that, dinner was over. I left the kitchen, my appetite gone, his words still clinging to me like a stain I couldn't scrub off. But one thing was clear, this wasn't the end of the conversation. It was just the beginning. Because if he thought I was just going to take this, to let it slide like all the times before, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, his words replayed in my head, looping like a cruel joke. You should try that too. Help you out. Appreciate it. By morning, my anger had settled into something colder. I wasn't going to let this go. I needed to know if he really, truly believed what he had said. Or if, by some miracle, he would realize how deeply he had hurt me. So, over breakfast, I brought it up again. About last night, I started, watching him sip his coffee like nothing had happened. Do you really think the best gift for me is workout equipment? He barely looked up from his phone. I thought it was a good idea. You were saying you felt out of shape, so I figured it would be useful. Useful? I repeated, feeling my pulse quicken. Like a vacuum cleaner is useful? Or a blender? He finally set his mug down with a sigh. Come on. You're twisting my words. I'm trying to do something nice for you. Nice? I let out a sharp laugh. You compared me to some woman at work, then decided that instead of flowers or a dinner, I deserved a home gym. You don't see how insulting that is? He shook his head, exasperated. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. I wasn't saying you're fat. And there it was. The careful, calculated denial. He had never actually used the word, so in his mind, he had done nothing wrong. But you didn't have to say it, did you? I shot back. You just made it clear in every other way. He leaned back, arms crossed. I don't get why you're acting like I insulted you. Wouldn't it be worse if I didn't care? If I just let you go on feeling bad about yourself and did nothing? Let me go on feeling bad about myself. As if I had personally requested to be made insecure. As if I had asked him to appoint himself my personal fitness coach. You know what would have actually been nice? I said, my voice calmer now, but sharper. If you had just told me I was beautiful. If you had made me feel like I was enough instead of implying I need fixing. He blinked, as if the thought had genuinely never occurred to him. I do think you're beautiful, he said finally, but the words felt empty, thrown in as an afterthought. You have a funny way of showing it, I muttered, pushing my plate away. My appetite was gone again. The rest of breakfast passed in tense silence, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. Because this wasn't just about the gift. It wasn't even just about this moment. It was about all the ways he had slowly chipped away at me, disguised as help, as caring. And if he truly believed that this was what love looked like, then maybe it was time I started redefining love for myself. And that realization? That was just the beginning. The silence between us stretched through the day, thick and unspoken. He went about his routine as if nothing had happened, scrolling through his phone, watching TV, making small talk that I answered with nods and one-word responses. I wasn't giving him the fight he expected, and I could tell it was bothering him. By evening, he finally broke. Are you seriously still upset about this? He asked, standing in the doorway as I folded laundry. I didn't look up. Still? I repeated. You make it sound like I threw a tantrum over a broken nail. He sighed, rubbing his temple like he was the one who had been exhausted by this. I don't get what you want me to do. Apologize for trying to do something nice for you? I dropped the shirt in my hands and turned to face him. No. I want you to understand why it wasn't nice. Why comparing me to some woman at work and deciding I need a workout setup wasn't thoughtful, it was humiliating. His expression flickered with something, guilt, maybe, but it was gone just as fast. I wasn't comparing you. Then why bring her up at all? I shot back. Out of every way you could have encouraged me, why did it have to be about her? He exhaled heavily, like he was trying to stay patient. Because it was just an example. You're blowing this way out of proportion. There it was again. The classic dismissal. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course. I'm just overreacting, right? Because my feelings are only valid when they're convenient for you. That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying, I snapped. Every time I tell you something hurts me, you act like I'm being dramatic instead of actually listening. Why is it so hard for you to just admit you were wrong? His jaw tightened. Because I don't think I was wrong. And there it was, the truth, blunt and unapologetic. So you really think there's nothing wrong with implying I need to lose weight? I think there's nothing wrong with encouraging you to be healthier, he corrected, as if he was taking the moral high ground. But you'd rather twist it into something ugly instead of seeing the intention behind it. I stared at him, stunned at how effortlessly he had shifted the blame onto me. As if the problem wasn't what he had said, but how I had chosen to react. As if I was the unreasonable one for not gratefully accepting his unwanted concern. And in that moment, something inside me snapped into focus. This wasn't just about this conversation. This was about every time he had dismissed my feelings, every time he had made me feel guilty for being upset. This was about a pattern, one I was finally seeing clearly. I nodded slowly, a quiet realization settling over me. You really don't get it, I murmured. No, I don't, he admitted, crossing his arms. Because I didn't think I had to tiptoe around my own wife just to suggest something that could be good for her. Tiptoe? I scoffed. You didn't tiptoe. You stomped all over me and called it love. He didn't respond. Maybe because, for the first time, there was nothing left to say. I turned back to my laundry, suddenly feeling lighter in a way I couldn't quite explain. Because this argument? It wasn't just another disagreement. It was proof of something I had been afraid to admit for a long time. And soon, I would have to face what that meant. For the next few days, I withdrew. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, no shouting, no slamming doors. Just quiet. A silence that felt heavier than any argument. And the best part? He noticed. I could see it in the way he hesitated before speaking to me, the way he checked his words, maybe wondering if I was still overreacting. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Not done in the way that meant packing a bag and leaving overnight. Not yet. But done with waiting for him to understand. Done with trying to squeeze validation out of someone who saw my feelings as a problem instead of a priority. One evening, he tried again, maybe thinking time had smoothed things over. "So, are we good now?" he asked cautiously, testing the waters. I looked up from my book, meeting his eyes. "Are we?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I mean, I don't want to keep fighting about this." "Neither do I." "Okay, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to forget it." He exhaled sharply. "Jesus, you really can't let things go, can you?" I smiled then, small and knowing. "No, I can't. Not anymore." Because that was the real shift, wasn't it? Not in him, he was still the same man, still seeing himself as the reasonable one, still treating my emotions like an inconvenience. No, the shift had been in me. I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I wasn't waiting for him to wake up one morning and magically become the kind of man who understood the damage his words caused. I was done waiting for him to change. Now, the only thing left to figure out was what came next. And as I looked at him, really looked at him, I realized something. Whatever was next, it probably wasn't us. A few more days passed in that quiet tension. I kept my distance, not in anger, but in quiet resolution. The silence had become a comfortable companion, one I hadn't known I could make peace with. I wasn't looking for any grand gestures from him, no apology or plea to fix things. I had stopped expecting those things a while ago. One morning, he handed me my coffee as usual, but this time, there was a weight in the way he held it, like he was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. The conversation we'd had that night still lingered between us, unfinished, but not unresolved. In the absence of words, I had found clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes when you stop expecting someone to change and start accepting things as they are. We went on with our routine, but something had shifted. Not in the way that we were fighting more, or less, but in the way I began to let go of the need for him to see things my way. And in that release, I realized how much lighter I felt. I still didn't know what the future held. Maybe it would involve us figuring things out, or maybe it wouldn't. But one thing was certain, I wasn't waiting anymore. And whatever came next, I knew I was going to be okay on my own.